Yes, indeed. Welcome into another episode of Rip and Total Hockey Now. Got my wrong show going there to start. Maybe because it's only two instead of three, and I'm thrown off by that. But yes, let's indicate it is Total Hockey Now here on the Total Hockey Now YouTube channel. I am at Pucking Thoughts, Adam Bernard. Man to my left is at Fuzzy Chris 91, or right if you're looking on the screen. We are down a man today. Anthony, as a Cowboys fan, as a Mets fan, has said it's too much. Can't do it anymore. Despite the Devils' strong start, it's just too much, and he can't do it. Or he got stuck at work and didn't make it home on time. You decide.
He's not at the dentist. We can confirm that. So for those of you who are worried about his oral health, it's fine today. I think it's definitely the Devils getting shut out 1-0 to San Jose is definitely that's definitely a way to live life.
I mean, they bounced back though. They got that nice win in Florida. That's one you can write home.
Sure, but you still lost to San Jose.
Yeah, and not only did you lose to San Jose, but it went in off a former Shark into the net. So I mean, there you go. Maybe Timo Meyer still had a little bit of allegiance to his old team, but nonetheless. Ant will be back next week. Surprising that it's not dental work, considering we're about a week or so out from Halloween after. So you would think that would have been dental work, but not the case. But here we are. Let's see here. We got Frank in the chat. I offered Necas and Nason for Forsberg and Montour, 11-team rotisserie, plus minus in hits. Your thoughts? So let's see. So we're going to talk a little Martin Necas later. We're going to do a fantasy deep dive on him. Stefan Nason off to a strong start for the Devils on that third line for Forsberg and Montour. I don't know if I would, if I'm on the Forsberg Montour side, I'm probably declining that just because, I think Nason cools off, even if Necas is off to a really good start this year.
Frank, problem here is you're in a league that has the plus minus. So maybe you're new here and you don't know I said I was not going to say anything unhinged today, but if you're in a right, and we're not even 3 minutes in. But if you're in a league with plus minus, just, I don't know, man, figure it out. Just, welcome to 2024. I will say this though. I'm going to assume that Forsberg is Philip Forsberg and not Anton Forsberg or Philip Forsberg, right? Like Colorado Avalanche Philip, right? So if you're offering Necas and Nason for Forsberg and Montour, and that's a accept, I would take that and then never look back. Brandon Montour, excellent defenseman. Yes, Philip Forsberg. I know the Nashville Predators are off to an absolutely slow start. They're going to correct themselves. Martin Necas is on fire. Homie is gassing right now. And Nason is just off to a strong start. So I think you're doing the classic selling high on these guys. And I think that's perfectly fine. I would much rather trust Forsberg. That's the best player in the deal, and that's what I'm getting. Regardless of what Martin Necas does. Good start for him. I would sell high on him.
We'll do a deeper dive on Necas later, but 8 goals and 5 assists for Forsberg to start the year, 13 points in 16 games. So even though the team has had a slow start, maybe he's not on pace for what he did last year, but he's still playing pretty well. So yeah, if I could get Forsberg, I'm a big Philip Forsberg guy there. But yes,
am I?
We'll do our league deep dive later. We'll talk about who got him later. But let's get into NHL headlines here. Let's talk about first thing up here. Winnipeg, the first team in NHL history to win 15 of its first 16 NHL games. Let's see here. They're also the fourth team since basically the second 6 came into the league to lead the NHL in goals for and goals against per game through their first 15. They scored 5 or more goals in half of their games, and their 73 goals are third most by a team in its first 16 games over the last 3 decades. Have to talk about Connor Hellebuck here. 12-1, 1.92 goals against, 934 save percentage. Already has 3 shutouts. We're not even at Thanksgiving yet. And Eric Comrie doing his job, 3-0, 213 goals against, 914 save percentage. What else do you want out of a backup now? But my question is Connor Hellebuck has to be in the Hart Trophy conversation if he continues to play this way, right? He's got to be a nominee. I mean, I know Carey Price was the last one to do it. Only, 6 or 7 goalies have ever won the Hart Trophy ever. But, he's got to be in the conversation.
I am perfect. Yes, I think he should be in the conversation for it. Now, am I rooting for him not to win it because Carey Price was the last one to win it? I mean, maybe, but he is on a whole. Connor Hellebuck is on a whole other level. It must be wild to be an NHL team and right now be too good for the NHL. Like the Winnipeg Jets, they came out, they smacked the Rangers around. They made the Rangers look terrible. That was one of those nights for Mika Zibanejad, man. He looked like he deserved to be in our Monday night league, not playing in the NHL with that kind of performance. But it is, whew, man, it is a good time to be a Winnipeg Jets fan. I would definitely dabble some money on Hellebuck winning the Hart. The Vezina is his, let's be honest. And the Hart, I get that he is an elite goalie, but right now he's got some video game numbers. Like this, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter who he plays. Doesn't matter how good the opponent is. I mean, he's just going out there stopping pucks. So it's his.
Plus 3,500 to win the Hart right now on FanDuel.
Goalies don't get it very often, but when they do, it's because they've earned it. And again, it's really early, but he's on pace with what Carey Price's numbers were. So, I mean, that's the benchmark, I guess, for me.
Yeah, and then listen, I know there's a ton of talent in Winnipeg. It's not just like the goalie stealing the show here for Winnipeg, and they're just living and dying by that. Mark Scheifele is having an incredible season out of the gate. Kyle Connor continues to do his thing. Gabe Vilardi, we've talked about over the last couple of weeks. Vladislav Nemesnikov, we've talked about him as being like the ultimate Swiss Army knife. That's a guy that, like, man, you look at him on paper and say, oh, that's your second center. But, man, he is just, between Ehlers and Perfetti, it's and one of the best third lines in the league. It's just they're fun to watch, and they're going to slow down at some point, right? Like they can't finish the season like 70-12, like the 96 Bulls or whoever it was. But, they dismantled the Rangers. Now, the Rangers, we'll talk about them later. They aren't playing their best hockey right now anyway. But yeah, Winnipeg, far and away, best team in the league.
Somebody had mentioned a couple weeks ago, I don't remember who it was, but they were talking about Gabe Vilardi and like his slow start and like, what should I do with him? And I remember Ant and I just being like, hey, just like, first of all, where you drafted him is already a bargain. Just give him a moment. Let the wheels keep going here. And now he's riding there. That was a great goal yesterday that he scored as well. So, yeah, it's fun. It's a fun time to be a Winnipeg Jet fan.
It's a fun time to be a Winnipeg Jet fan, but maybe not Austin Matthews not having so much fun right now. Upper body injury continues to linger for him. He's missed 4 games, looking like 5 if he doesn't play tonight against the Capitals. Injury is just not getting to where it needs to be. Craig Berube said on Tuesday. So we're just trying to manage it and trying to make sure when he comes back, he's good and 100%. Yes, the Ottawa game was not pretty last night. You never want to get shut out by the Senators in the Battle of Ontario, but I would go with the side of caution. Don't rush Matthews back. That's a guy that when he comes back in the lineup, you want him to be back in the lineup and not, back out 3 games later because he tweaked that same injury.
As an Austin Matthews owner, I just want him to be healthy. Whenever that is, just, he's dealt with his injuries a little bit. I just want him to be at 100%. And, there's more than enough skill in that Toronto lineup. They played terrible last night. That was embarrassing to watch, but I just want him to be healthy because I need him. Selfishly, I need him for fantasy hockey, and that's really all I care about. That is the monster I've become, because now I care about my fantasy players more than, actual hockey teams. I just need them to, figure it out. So take your time, Austin, just stay home on the penthouse floor, overlooking the skyline of Toronto. Just, get a massage or something wherever it hurts. Drink your vitamin C. And, when you're back, just, I don't know, score 50.
Yeah. Maybe flirting with 70 is starting, just because he can make up that time. It's only been a few games, but if it starts to linger a few more, maybe 60 is the more attainable plateau there. A couple other guys checking in. We got State of Survival there with his nominee for the Calder Trophy. Maybe we'll do a little Calder odds here in the coming weeks. Going back to our Philip Forsberg trade that Frank threw out there before. Extinct chiming in. Think Forsberg has proven on what he can in year in and year out. Nature's off to a burner start. You don't know how long it's going to last. We're going to talk about whether we think that's going to last or not later. We'll also talk a little bit NHL trade news here coming up in a second. But Connor McDavid sits at 999 career points, and he's going to get a chance to hit the 1,000-point milestone tomorrow night at home against Nashville. And that's for a guy like McDavid, that's just a checkbox on the list of career achievements along the way.
I mean, it would have been nice if the Oilers could have finished that in regulation. That would have been kind of cool. But Connor McDavid's the gift that keeps on giving, man. I don't know what it's like to be too good for the 0.1% of the world. That must be a different life.
Well, I mean, Austin Matthews too. I mean, he's living that kind of life too in Toronto. I mean, Edmonton, I've been there. I'm not going to, say anything about it, but Edmonton does apply to a certain degree. But yeah, I mean, he's a hockey icon in Edmonton, Alberta. And if he ever brings a Stanley Cup home, they may rename the province like McDavid. Well, if they didn't rename it for Gretzky, they won't rename it for McDavid, but he's definitely getting a town named after him at some point in the province.
Why don't you just name whatever? I mean, Arizona doesn't have a team anymore. Just name wherever the Coyotes used to play. Name that boulevard right in front of it, the Austin Matthews Drive or something. I don't know. I
mean, and Connor McDavid too. I mean, maybe he's got to get some sort of town named after him in Alberta.
Connor McDavid needs the key to the city of Edmonton. That's what he needs. Just give him the key, let him walk in and out, let him do what he wants. Because that was again another classic McDavid performance. Just racking up a quiet 4 points like there was nothing there.
Yeah, just let him be like honorary deputy mayor. Like, like you give a kid like a hat or like a sticker that says, just let him actually do it. If he's got an off day and he shows up to City Hall or whatever it's called there, yeah, go for it. What's going on today? He should have a say in what's going on there. Now let's talk a little trades here, because that's what we're here to do today. One of the comments we saw in the chat here, State of Survival. What does Eller do? They're trading Eller do for the Pens. Are they doing a tweak, partial rebuild, or tear down with Crosby only left? Well, funny you bring that up, because that's what we're going to talk about here. So how far down does Dubas strip this team is really the question here, because like we said, Crosby just signed that extension. Other guys that could potentially go, Michael Bunting, Marcus Pettersson, and Matt Grzelcyk on the blue line. But I mean, that is kind of a rough look for Crosby. And I know he doesn't really, maybe he doesn't care. Maybe he doesn't. He'll never say it. He's got his rings there. He wants to be a one-team guy, but it's got to be rough to sign the contract extension. And now, you're already making moves that are more akin to trade deadline moves. You're already starting to sell some parts off.
I mean, what do you want to do with this team? The Penguins are absolutely trash, man. They got I knew they were bad, and then Dallas embarrassed them. And I don't know where you start with this team. This is an aging roster. And even if everybody is available, first of all those guys, right? Malkin, the same thing. I mean, nobody's taking Carlson's contract, let's face it. Chris Letang, all these guys got no trade clause, no move clause. They're not how much are you willing to waive that at this point in your career? The same thing with Sid. I don't know if he wants to go anywhere. My assumption is he won't. My assumption is he's going to stay in Pittsburgh. He has won everything that there is to win. He's not necessarily coming in to cash a check, but that next wave of guys coming in, they need support, right? The same way when he showed up, he played 1 year with Mario, and I'm sure that did wonders for his career. But what are you going to get for the rest of these guys? What are you going to get for Malkin at his age? What are you going to get for Letang? How in the world are you going to move Erik Karlsson unless you move him to the Vegas Golden Knights, who we have established do not have any concept of what the salary cap is or how it functions? They can circumvent it in some way. Where are these guys going? This is an aging roster with nothing to write about. So this is a team that needs to be stripped down. And this team is about to be really bad, for a few years, right? They were bad, and then Crosby showed up, and then it took them a minute, and then they were perennial cup contenders. They won Stanley Cups. If you're a Pittsburgh fan over the last 20 years, you have been well treated. Now it's time to rebuild. I also don't know what Kyle Dubas is going to do with this team, because if he promised this core any type of success, I mean, it's not there. You can't do it.
This is going to sound stupid, but follow me. Crosby playing so well into his career is not doing the Penguins any favors. And the example I'm going to use is the Blackhawks. Jonathan Toews, when he started to go south, he went south quick. When Patrick Kane started to get injured a little bit more, I mean, he was still producing, but he was dealing with injuries more and more. Blackhawks recognized, like, all right, the window's is closing. Let's go. Now, granted, they get the Connor Bedard pick, and that certainly helps kickstart a rebuild. But they recognized, hey, it's over. Let's get this thing going. The Penguins have dragged this on for a couple of years now.
But we all knew this. Like, we all knew that the Penguins were not going to be a good team. Like, it's just not right. Like, it's reality. This team is not good. And if they want to lose games, it's easy. Just put Tristan Jarry out there. That should solve the issue. I mean, if you're going to try to increase his trade value, he's got to play. And when he plays, he's not very good. So, I mean, that's like, I don't know where to start with this team. I would not want to inherit it and try to figure out where I'm going with it, especially with all those players. Like, players believe that they can win, right? And they believe that they can turn this around. And if there's anybody that I trust who can turn it around, it is definitely Sid. He will drag this team as far as he can. But he can't do it alone. And like, how much is it worth now to go to the playoffs and get bounced in the first round? Like,
I don't even think they're in that range. I mean, you look at the Metropolitan Division, 4 top teams are pretty well established. Now, there's still a lot of season to go, but like, there's definitely an upper tier and a lower tier in that division. You look at the Atlantic, Florida, Toronto, Tampa, Boston. So, I mean, there's another 4 spots right there. You know, and we're not even talking about like other teams potentially making a run or a push. So I mean, the goaltending also doesn't help too, because I mean, it's so bad that like, even if they were playing all right, they're just not getting anything behind them. So, and like Extinct says there, I think all the way down, you got some guys that be good pieces for playoff contenders, get good picks and prospects, and prepare for post Crosby. Yeah, that's the plan. But I don't think they're in a rush to do anything. Like, yeah, they made the move. Maybe the Caps called them and were like, hey, we already want to start gearing up. You know, they know Lars Eller. He spent some time there. Was an effective player for him. That's the kind of players that the Capitals need to be adding as depth guys. You don't really need to be adding too much at the top right now. But yeah, it's a bad scene in Pittsburgh, and it's going to get ugly. And, you know, maybe Crosby's ready to fully embrace just being like the mentor role to a whole bunch of new young guys that come in. But it's, you know, and if I'm dubious, maybe I'm not actively shopping guys, but if people are calling, I got no problem making deals now. I mean, the value goes up the closer you get to the deadline, but maybe you get somebody that's anxious and overpays now.
Let's not also forget that Crosby continues to take the most team-friendly deal ever. So $8.7 million for him is not, it's not expensive. It's not a long-term deal, right? Like, there's a lot of favors there. At this point, it would be, what does Sid want to do, right? Like, what do you want to do? That would be my conversation. I'd have ownership and Kyle sit down with him and go like, hey, do you want to go anywhere? Do you want to be part of this? Do you want to not? Do you want to go chase? Like, where do you want to go? And then just figure it out. Because every team would line up for him again, right? Like, there's no question about it. I just don't think he wants to do that. And I don't think he's going to go out and chase that, because he has done everything there is to do as a hockey player. So why would you move your family and do all that for what? Like, it just, I wouldn't do it. I would just, I don't know, go out there, be a leader for that team. There are young players that are going to have to come in at some point, right? So help the next wave, get ready.
I think at the end of this contract, if he is still playing at a level where teams covet him, then I think he might be okay with, you know, if it's the right situation for, like, you know, but then again, maybe he's like, no, I want to have my last game in Pittsburgh. I want that to be the only jersey I ever put on. You know, well, you know, 4 years is a long time away, so we'll see what changes there. Now, I see I put up on the screen, let's make a deal. Who trades next? You had suggested Nashville last week as a team that could need some help on the blue line there. But they seem like they're slowly starting to get their footing. It seems like they've bottomed out. They're starting to turn a corner. So maybe they're going to give it a little more time there. But a team I want to talk about, and the team you mentioned earlier, was the Rangers. Mika Zibanejad, an extended slump. That blue line has real bad problems defending plays off the rush. No depth there. Igor's been keeping them afloat. Shesterkin, although he's, you know, hasn't had the best last couple of games. You know, they don't have they're 18th in cap space, just under $500,000. We all know what that Trouba contract is, and he's got a 16-team no trade clause. So I mean, I can see the Rangers making a move but yeah, I don't know. Like, there's a lot wrong right there, and I think they're starting to get exposed, and they don't know what to do. And then once a guy like Mika goes into a slump, okay, well, that's one key piece that's of the foundation that's not there anymore.
I mean, I just don't know what the Rangers are going to do with themselves. I guess they're kind of tied down to this group right now, and it's more of a case of saying, "Hey, the guys who are here are going to have to figure it out." You can't move Trouba. I don't think he's going to want to go anywhere, just because his wife is in medical school and stuff like that, and he's talked about it's very important to him. So I kind of see the Rangers like, what else are you going to add to this team, right? Like they're good, they're just not playing well sometimes. So, like, I don't know how much more they can go out and get. I think this is more of a solution inside, in the same way that it kind of is for Nashville, right? Like, they just don't have the money to do it. So you got to find ways inside your room to figure it out. You got to do something. The team that I think will pull off the first move here, I would say, is probably the Carolina Hurricanes. And so this is a team that, yes, they are doing well, but when you look at them like from the outside, they're nothing to write home about, right? These, like, they have some holes in their lineup. Like, credit to Jack Roslovic for what he's been able to do. Same thing for Martin Necas. Like, these guys have been great, but this is still a team with like Jesperi Kotkaniemi as your second line center. And then there's Jordan Stahl, who is aging, Jack Drury and whatnot. I think defensively, they're good. Like, this is a team that's built from the back end out, right? And I think that blue line probably needs another, somebody else to help them out, right? Brent Burns is getting older. Shane Gostisbehere is not there to play defense. And maybe they probably need a goalie, right? Because you don't know how healthy Frederik Andersen is going to be. At this point, he is not. So if he were to be out for an extended period of time, like, I don't think Spencer Martin is the solution there. This is a good enough team for now, but I don't see them having the depth to like get out of the first round. Like, they just don't have the depth to compete.
I'll agree on the depth. But when they're at full bore, and yes, they don't have Anderson right now. They don't, Seth Jarvis is out of the lineup at the moment. But when they have the roster the way they want, I think they can beat anybody. I think their blue line's fine. Kochetkov has won his last 7 games, I believe. He's established himself as the, at least the guy who's going to get a little bit more starts over Anderson when he comes back. But he's quickly going towards being like the true starter with Anderson, but, becoming more of a backup, not due to performance, but more due to just he can't ever stay on the ice. I think I don't think they're the next ones to make a move. I think at the end of the day, I'd like it to see, just because like the Rangers, like you said, it's probably got to come within the room, but like they're a perfect candidate for like they need a shakeup. Like something needs to change there. And yeah, what you said about Carolina, like Jack Roslovic leading the team in scoring, that's not sustainable. Svechnikov got off to a little bit of a slow start, but he seems to be playing better lately. So Foster's been out of the lineup too. I think they like the way they're built. They know they've got their lines, they've got their roles, but yeah, one injury.
This team needs a dynamic goal scorer.
Yeah,
they need a Jake Gensel kind of thing, right? They're missing that. They probably need a centerman, right? You need a second line centerman, right? Like, I know it'll never happen, but I mean, Pittsburgh has an aging of Evgeny Malkin, and Carolina needs a second line centerman, right? Problem is that contract doesn't, like, it's not good. And I mean, how healthy can Gino really be? But like, that's like, Carolina needs to address their top 6. Even when they're healthy, some of those guys right now skating in the top 6 would probably be really good on a third line, but that's not a top 6. Like, that top 6 doesn't scare me. And I know the playoffs are far away, but if I was going to face any team in the first round, right? I mean, Carolina would probably be on my list of teams. I get that they're good defensively, but that hasn't helped them yet, because scoring goals is still the most important thing in hockey.
Extinct checking in. I'm hoping one of these contenders comes shopping for players in Philly. Got a lot of guys treading water and just eating up space and eating up some players eating cap up. Yeah, I would imagine Pittsburgh's already starting to offload some stuff. I can't imagine Philly will be too far behind as the season progresses. Again, last year they were in the third spot for a while, and then the whole situation happened there with Carter Hart, and that kind of just derailed the season. Now they've got no goaltending. Now, speaking of goaltending, Frank checks in. Picked up Quick for a shutout win, dropped him for Jake Allen for a 1-0 loss. I exchanged him for Urson, speaking of the Flyers, who got the win, and then had Knight in net last night against the Devils. Start on streaming goalies. I'm not a fan of streaming goalies only because you really got to be paying attention to who's starting that day, and then you waste waiver priority to doing that. Now, if you find yourself in a draft, if your draft strategy was to essentially call it zero goalie, like they call zero running back in football, where you're like, all right, I'll just, we saw, I think it was Gene's team in the league that did that, where like his goalies were like Binnington and somebody else. That can work for you. If you're willing to keep an eye on the, go to Daily Faceoff or wherever you get your starting goalie news from every day, you're willing to check that, at 10, 11 a.m. Eastern after those teams have their skates, and then again at like 2 o'clock Eastern after the West Coast teams have had their morning skates, and you see who was in the starters crease, who wasn't, all that stuff. A little bit easier to figure out when teams are on a back-to-back, but I don't like doing it, but if that's the strategy, there's nothing wrong with it, and you can win that way. You can steal some goalie categories some weeks by streaming. You get a guy like Casey DeSmith, when he plays well for Dallas, and there you go.
It's definitely it's not that I'm against it. It's just that as the season goes on, players are going to get hurt. And then what happens is that streaming pool becomes smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So like Jonathan Quick is on a very good team. Jake Allen is on a very good team, right? Argue for Spencer Knight as well, on a very good team. Sam Ersson is not. The Flyers are not good. So like you have streamed 3 goalie, right? 3 of those 4 goalies are on above average hockey teams. So at some point, somebody may decide in a league and say, hey, I'm going to grab one of those goalies. And then, like I said, the pool gets smaller and smaller. So I think it can work for now. It also depends on like who's your starter. You know what I mean? Like who's your one. And then if you're streaming your second goalie, fine. You know what I mean? Or your third. Okay. But it's a lot of commitment. Like Adam said, it's a lot of commitment. And the problem that I've seen doing it is, like I said, that pool gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Think of it as like quarterbacks for fantasy football. As they get worse, as they get hurt, that streaming pool just becomes smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's what's going to happen with goalies, right? If you're, let's say, in a 10-team league, 2 goalies, right? Like 20 goalies, maybe a team carries a third. You can kind of get away with it. Once you start getting into 12-team leagues, right, you're already holding 24 goalies. Most teams are holding a third one already. So my theory here, Frank, is you're holding a 10-team league, and like it has worked so far. But you're definitely you're definitely playing with fire. You're like Matvei Michkov in Philadelphia. It's worked out, but you're definitely playing with fire because at some point John Tortorella is going to sit you in the press box.
And it also, in terms of waiver priority, it hampers your ability if you suffer an injury. Now, presumably you're deeper at the skater positions, but defense, forward, center, wing, whatever you got in your league settings. But it hurts your ability to, if you're using up waiver priority and you're always down at the bottom of the league, it hurts your ability to maybe get a replacement player for somebody that's injured. If you are going to stream, I do like the way Chris said, where at least have one of your, have like a Andre Vasilevsky as one of your guys locked in. He's going to play the bulk of the starts, and then you rotate the other spot. Or if you're willing to do 3 goalie spots, you get a handcuff of one team, and then you stream the other spot. So that way, you meet your games minimum, because some leagues you have to have 3 or 4 minimum a week, which if you're streaming, you can hit. But again, you like to have that insurance of at least knowing have something you can lean on. So there we go. Love the comments today in the chat and everybody checking in. You talked a little bit about Martin Necas earlier. Let's do a little fantasy focus here and actually do a little bit of a deeper dive on him. 8 goals and 16 assists in 14 games. Signed a 2-year contract extension for the Red Hot Hurricanes the last offseason. Now let's look at his past few years. He had for his first 3 seasons, 36 to 41 points with the Canes. Then he spiked up to 71 points in 2022, 23, 28 goals, 43 assists, before coming back down last year to 53 points, 24 and 29. His ADP was 129 overall, so this was a guy that you could have gotten in the early portions of the double-digit rounds, and he's already returning a tremendous amount of value for him. Obviously, we're not buying him as a point-per-game player, but is he a guy 85, 90 points in an increased role in Carolina? You know, we talk about they don't have a ton of scoring there. They need they need a Jake Gensel. Well, Necas, he's not Gensel, but he is going to be the straw that stirs the drink in terms of putting the puck in the net. And he passes the puck well. I could see him breaking 80, but I don't know if he's going to go too far north of that.
That's about where I'd stand as well. His expected goals, he's above it by 2.3, which is not it's not much, but it's a start. So, and most Carolina skaters, their advanced metrics are above what they think this team is. So, at some point, some regression is going to happen here, and I don't know if he can maintain it. And if I can get top value for him, all right, I'm going to go out and get it. Okay. So a few years ago, I think it was like 2 weeks into the season, I traded Cole Caulfield for Austin Matthews 1-for-1. Now that trade ended up being a wash because Matthews and Caulfield both got hurt. Right. Now, some people, right, got their wires all twisted. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe that trade went through. But at the time, I mean, Caulfield had more goals and everything. And again, the same thing here. It's the same story with Caulfield. He's up to 12 goals. He's leading the league in goals. Do I think he's going to lead the NHL in goals? No. Do I think I should get maximum value for him? Yes. So I think that's the question right now with Martin Necas is what you can hold him. And if he performs, great. But if you can get some value for him, right? A player who's struggling a little bit, or maybe piece him with, try to collect two players, a 2-for-1. Sometimes as an owner holding on to too much on one end. If you can better your fantasy team by moving him, do so. Because I don't think he's a 90-point player. And I think an 80, like a point per game pace for him on this Carolina team is asking a lot. That's where I'm at with him. Hot start, agree. Sell him.
I would flip him if I can, because of the increased value right now. Because the other thing you got to remember too, 11 points in 13 games for Seth Jarvis. He's also, Jarvis and Necas are the top two right wings. However you slice it, those are the top two right wings in Carolina. Necas is going to probably get even more minutes right now with Jarvis out for the time being. So maybe you hold on to him just for a little bit longer, let him get his value up even more while Jarvis is out, and maybe they lean on him a little bit more. He gets maybe a couple extra minutes a night. And then once Jarvis comes back, maybe that's the time to sell on him. And you should get good value for you. So, and I don't worry about a guy like Necas. Oh, he's going to go on and score like 45 and 55, like and 60. I don't think he's going to be a 100-point guy where it's going to burn you. But maybe he goes on and has that 85, 90-point season. And if you'd held on to him, he still would have been good too. But yeah, a guy like him where he's had some up and down and had a spike one year. Yeah, I would try and capitalize off that now.
Again, I'm just trying to find value. You know what I mean? Like you're trying to find as much value as you can in these guys, because the last thing you want to do is like once he starts to go cold, then you got everybody saying, well, you see, like that runs over. You know what I mean? And maybe you don't get the kind of push that you're looking for out of him. I don't know, but like it's been quite a start for him. Right. It's been quite the start. Yeah, I would just look for value.
Yeah, I agree. So there we go. Martin Necas and Necas and Fantasy Focus. Back to the goalie conversation. Frank says his goalies are Gustafsson and Omark. So I could see why you're streaming there, because Omark at least is a guy that maybe he's not going to get a ton of wins in Ottawa, but he's going to do a lot of other things, and he's going to get a bunch of starts. And he says, I'm streaming Talbot tonight. I'll continue streaming strategy for now and have fun with it. I know it's only a 5-game slate, and I don't want to tip my hand for TMP, but I don't know if I would have taken either of the goalies in that game. That being said, Detroit will probably beat Pittsburgh, so you probably get the win if nothing else.
I would, out of all those goals, again, looking at Gustafsson and Allmark, I'm going to take a guess that this is maybe a 12-team league. I would probably hold on to Jake Allen. I think if anybody's going to get a timeshare out for the rest of the year, right? Like, let's just disregard Ersson completely. Let's just pretend he's not even here. Let's like Men in Black kind of thing, like erase him from your memory, right? Spencer Knight's not going to see enough action. I don't think he is worth it. And the same thing for Jonathan Quick. I just don't think those two guys are going to play enough. I do think Jake Allen may play enough. I think that's a closer split than, let's say, Quick and Shesterkin and Bobrovsky and Knight. So that's the player I would look at one point to hold on to and see if you can package him in a deal, shipping him to whoever owns Markstrom. Be like, hey, here's your handcuff, and you can kind of milk that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I agree. Like, yes, the Devils brought in Jacob Markstrom to improve their goaltending, but they also brought him in to make sure he's ready to go for the playoffs. This is a guy in his early to mid 30s here. And if you have a good backup like Jake Allen, is Jake Allen a starting goalie? No. Is he a guy that you can play 1 out of every 4, 1 out of every 5 games? Absolutely. So, and yeah, like I said, that's another way to get some value too. Goalies like that, like Jake Allen, try and trade him to the team that has him. Like any league that I took Markstrom, I made sure to have Allen. I'm not messing around with that. So there. Now let's take a look. Speaking of fantasy hockey here, let's take a look. Fantasy check-in here of our league, the Total Hockey Now League. You can ignore that 10-1 that I'm trailing right now by Max Knight. Still early in the week. Chris up 10-1 on Josh Wagner. We got Chris Wassel here and the Silver Fox in a heated matchup. We got Ants up 9-1 over Andrew Dewhurst. And then Ant's brother also has a 10-1 lead. Something about that Rivera family this week over Did You Just Fart? And Gene and Wally in a tight one there. So let's take a look at the transactions from the last week as well. Let's see.
I need Wally. I need you. I need you to try to slow Gene down a little bit because I'm trying to rack up a big week here, and I'm having a hard time because every time I look at his team, I see Kaprizov, and that makes me cry because I know that he could have been mine, and he's not.
Now, you look at Gene, we talk about goalie streaming right there. Tarasov for Blackwood, and then the next day after Blackwood gets his revenge game against the Devils, picks up Barbashev. So there you go. There's a perfect example of Stan. He had Tarasov there. Now, he had dropped Nason to get him. Maybe he wishes he hadn't done that because Nason had gotten picked up pretty well by Chris Wassel. You're not going to get a Devil on a hot streak by Chris Wassel. That's for sure. So
that was not going to happen. You were not going to get him back once that happened. That was it.
And then Dawson Mercer, after we talked about him on last week's show, curiously now on Ant's team. So there we go. Funny how that works. And then I got Noah Hannafin last week for Mario Ferraro. He's been playing much better lately. I had to cut Justin Falk at one point, but I see Ant's brothers got him. And then, yeah, I mean, nothing too crazy here. We'll see if Pierre-Luc Dubois keeps going. And, yeah, you see a little more goalie streaming there. Dustin Wolf for Utah's goalie tonight. So, yeah. And there's Samuel Ersson. So they're getting picked up there. So not the only person streaming. So there we go. Taking a look at the standings. Let's see here. Gene still in first place. Chris in second place. Wally third. Myself in fourth. Craig in fifth. And then Ant in sixth. So the top 6 right there. But it's from first place to ninth place is 28 points. So it's not that far. It's still early in the season.
I'm just trying to separate myself here with Gene. This is going to be like last year's Rangers and Hurricanes. It's going to be the top 2, and then I just assume everybody else will just, battle it out there. But Wally, I really need you to slow down Gene here a little bit. I don't know, man. Figure it out.
Do it for me. Freight train, just like Kaprizov.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, just to prove the point about the goalie streaming we talked about before, Max Knight was a guy that's streaming. He's down at 11. Chris was just doing that. He's down at 10. So if it's a league where people are making transactions consistently, it doesn't burn you as much because it just kind of rolls. You got some guys that are patient and they don't do anything. You can kind of get stuck in that back half of the waiver priority for a while. So, go.
Your waiver priority has a little bit of value, especially as you go into the year, because then that's when once players start getting those season-ending injuries, right? It's not that they're like really season-ending; it's just that like they're done for you, right? Or if you start to get in that spot where you need to push for a playoffs and you need that capital, right? Like somebody had once said that there's no point in holding on to your waiver budget like for next year, right? Like you can't roll it into your IRA, like your your Roth IRA or your RSP. Like you can't. So spend it. If you don't use it, you literally lose it.
The thing I've learned with fab budget, and this is really, football, you probably need to have a little bit more. You want to probably be a tiny bit more conservative just because, you might need somebody in those later weeks. But with hockey, spend it early. I mean, still leave some in the tank for later on, because as the season goes on, there's not many guys that you want to go out there and there's not going to be there's not going to be like that wide receiver that all of a sudden vaults up the depth chart and now you're spending 50% of whatever your fab is left to get the guy. Those guys in hockey are pretty much gone once you get to like that, probably about right around now. And then like a lot of the acquisitions you're going to be making are like filler spots, somebody you're spending a couple of bucks on. So there's somebody you want early, spend the money. I mean, leave some, it's a long season, but don't be afraid to spend a little more early to get the guys you want early, because the talent pool dwindles as the season goes on.
Yeah, don't worry about it. We won't tell your wife, your girlfriend, your husband, your boyfriend. Like we won't tell them you're spending your fab budget, and you spend it. You know what I mean? You spend it how you want, ladies and gentlemen. You spend, that's it. Spend it as you want. That they're just, blow it. I don't care.
You earn that fab by signing up for the league. You spend it how you want.
There's no fight. There's no financial responsibility here. Okay.
No bills. There's no fantasy like electric bill.
That's it. I'm not here to tell you not to spend it. Go ahead. You've earned it. Treat yourself.
Exactly. Especially early in the season. And hey, listen, Christmas is coming up. If you celebrate, treat yourself to a nice gift, a little stocking stuffer, a nice little waiver pickup. A little Stephen Mason in the stocking.
There you go. And then come springtime, then you get some extra money back, and people will be like, oh my God, where'd you get that extra money? And then you'll be thinking about how back in November you picked up like Stephen Mason, and that worked out, and he carried your team to a championship, and he helped you pocket a couple of dollars. And you're gonna be like, thank you, Stephen Mason.
Speaking of fab, let's see who's supposed. Gene has spent. Wally's got half his budget gone already. He's really taken that one. He's taken that advice there. I still got it. I spent 15. You've only spent 15. A lot of guys here not spending their money. So we'll see. Eventually there'll be a guy that comes up that somebody will want to go after, but maybe I'll reduce that to 100 last year. I gave everybody 200 thinking we'd have a little more spending. Maybe I need to drop the number down to make the dollars worth a little more. But there we go. So now it's time. We'll wrap things up here. A little TMP, total Moneyline or Puckline. We make a pick for the night here. One of the other reasons we suspect that Mr. @Ant Rivera 86 is not here, he's got a pristine 2-0 record. It's a 5-game slate. Maybe he didn't really, he doesn't like the look of it. So, I'm stuck at work. I'm not going to make it home today, guys. Sorry. Yeah. I think that's what happened.
We're going to need a note from your employer.
Yeah. You know what? And I know I used to work at his employer, so I might be able,
we're going to reach out to HR and be like, hey, Ant wasn't here to fill his secondary duties here. Or we may suspect it's because he is doing well. And who was not unsure about how a puck line works is now 2-0. So we're having fun.
Company letterhead. Got to be on. It can't just be a piece of paper out of the printer. Company letterhead.
No, it doesn't work. Yeah.
All right. So we got a 5-game slate tonight here. We got the Red Wings are in Pittsburgh. The Leafs are in Washington. Toronto on a back-to-back after that 3-0 loss to Ottawa. Carolina and Utah to wrap up their road trip. LA and Colorado there, and then Vegas and Anaheim to close the night. So I've been doing TMP a couple of times on Twitter this week at Pucking Thoughts. Went 1-2 on Monday, but went 3-0 yesterday, so feeling good. Coming into this, I had a couple of picks I liked. The one I liked the most, though, and I didn't. This is one of those where you look at it, you see it, you just do a little bit of research, you don't overthink it, and you just take it. Detroit, Pittsburgh over 6.5 -115. That's my TMP pick for tonight. It's Cam Talbot versus, I believe, Alex Nedeljkovic. The Penguins' goaltending problems have been well documented. So I don't think it's going to be a problem for that game to go over, even if the teams get a little conservative. I don't know. I don't trust the goaltending on either side. So give me Detroit, Pittsburgh over 6.5 tonight as my total pick here.
That's a good one. I had that one circled as well. Lots of good overs tonight to target. Just an absolute mess in Pittsburgh. And I mean, I have no faith in Cam Talbot whatsoever. I have no faith in Detroit, but somebody's going to score. Either this finishes like 1-0 because nobody can find the back of the net, or it's an absolute barn burner. So there is no middle.
There is exactly. This is either going to be one where I know in the second period the bet is done, or I've hit. It's going to be, or I'm close to hitting. It's going to be one of those two. So that's that's going to the nationally televised game here in the States today. So good job on that. That's one everybody wants to see is Detroit Pittsburgh. Chris, we differ on this game, but I want to hear why. You got not only the Capitals on the money line started at -120 yesterday, and it just shot up, and it's not even worth the money line bet. But you like the puck line.
Absolutely. And like, if you didn't watch Toronto play yesterday, maybe you're like, oh, okay, like it's only a back-to-back. They were horrendous against Ottawa. And now they come into Washington. Washington has been very good to start the year, right? Like Dylan Strome is just like saucing passes over to his homie, Alex Ovechkin, and he is clapping bombs. This Washington team, last year they were frauds. I don't know if they're frauds this year, but so far, so good. Logan Thompson's going to get the start. I just don't like the way Toronto competed yesterday. There's no Austin Matthews. That, is one thing. And just the Leafs had no compete. They looked terrible. Like that game was something, man. So I don't know. And it's been a rough go for Joseph Woll to start the year. Stolarz has been the better goalie. Woll gets the back-to-back here. It's on the road. Maybe Toronto plays better, and I hope they do, because if not, Berube might tear the paint down before they leave. But I have maybe we need an empty net goal, but obviously that'll come because Ovechkin will be on the ice because we gotta, we're catching Gretzky. So the minute Toronto's goalie is out of the net, Alex Ovechkin is going to be on the ice, and here we go. So it might take an empty net goal to seal it, but I have no faith in the Toronto Maple Leafs tonight.
I have faith in the Leafs tonight. I took them in the money as my money line pick for today, and here's why. The reason I took the Devils on the money line against the Panthers is they were coming off an absolutely embarrassing loss to the San Jose Sharks. When good teams, have an embarrassing loss, and then they go and play, the defending Stanley Cup champion or a team like the Washington Capitals, who's one of the hottest teams in the league, they tend to get it up for night two. They tend to want to come out strong. So I'm going off of that. I know pretty much everybody's all over Washington. I mean, like we said, the money line bet it's not even worth it. The juice isn't there. The puck line at +175, but I think we get Toronto to show up tonight. I think they can eke one out on the money line. So I'm going to take Toronto money line there. And then the other one I had picked was I took the Vegas Golden Knights puck line over the Ducks because 6 of the 9 Ducks losses this year have been more than 2 goals. Vegas, playing well lately. So, I know the Carolina game was a little tough the other night. Lost the under on that with the stupid goal 12 seconds to go that Vegas got. That was annoying. But I think that, if I have to pick a puck line, that's the one I'm leaning towards tonight was Anaheim.
I also have the over in the LA Kings and Colorado game. It really doesn't matter who's in goal for LA because, Colorado's power play is just built different. That team is not built to win right now, but their power play is cooking, and the return of a Terry Lehkonen helps. So this team's going to be going out there. Also, Georgiev's in net. So I know he's been less terrible than his season start, but he's still terrible. Like he's still, in no part do I want to live in a world where I think Alexander Georgiev is good. So if the LA Kings are smart, they just put a couple pucks on goal. That should work out pretty well.
Another one I was looking at, and I don't necessarily have the guts to pull the trigger on it, but I was intrigued. I know Carolina is playing really well right now, but it is the end of a 3-game road trip. You were in the elevation in Colorado a couple nights ago. You're back in the elevation in Utah tonight. Maybe Utah can catch Carolina overlooking them at the end of a road trip. It's the first game of a homestand for Utah as well. Just something I was considering, not enough to actually pick it, but I was intrigued by that. So just something to keep an eye on. Carolina is going to win 7-0, but
how elevated is it in Salt Lake? As a
Let's see. I mean,
non-geographer, is this one of those things where I got to worry about elevation the same way I got to do in Colorado? Like, I know this is true for football and baseball, definitely baseball. Football, apparently it helps the ball as well when it's, I don't know, warmer or something. It travels better. But is this true for hockey as well? Do I have to worry about the burning lungs?
I mean, it does affect your conditioning, the thinner air. And Salt Lake City sits at a higher altitude than Denver. Denver's a mile high. It's 5,280 feet. You can convert to metric however you'd like. Utah's at about Salt Lake's at about 6,100 feet. So it's about 800 feet higher.
Damn.
At elevation.
Okay. Hey, there you go. We also got a geography lesson out of it.
I was a geography nerd as a kid. Like I used to take maps out and like play with them when I was a kid. Like can't believe I'm admitting that on the internet, but here we are. But yeah, as a kid, I got curious. Like, oh, the Jets are in Seattle today. Where are the Jets playing? You know what I mean? Like that's how it started. So yeah, I'm a geographer.
I know where Utah is on the map, and I could probably find Salt Lake City. I just not sure of the elevation of it. So
right in the Rockies.
You're right. That would make sense. They're pretty close. So now I got to worry about elevation in Utah as well. Interesting. So
for fantasy hockey, NHL betting, and topography talk, don't forget Total Hockey Now at Total Hockey Now. Well, rate, review, subscribe. We always appreciate you there. What do we got on the Slapshot podcast this week, Chris?
I learned the rules of Puckdoku because I learned the rules of Puckdoku. I'll leave it at that. It's worth your watch. I know I'm tooting my own horn here, but it is definitely worth. I call it 2 in a row, and I will not hear otherwise. We're gonna do Puckdoku again Friday because apparently that's the only reason people tune in. I have people DMing me their daily Puckdokus and telling me they're addicted to it now, and I'm like, I mean, if you're gonna get addicted to something, might as well be hockey and trying to figure out which player has played on which team at least once, or which stat they've achieved. And we're going to build some 4 nations teams. We're going to look at Canada and the United States. We're going to try to put together a roster and see. I'm going to be putting together a 100% correct roster. So.
And here's the thing, too. We've talked about how the state of Canadian goaltending. We haven't really talked about Logan Thompson. He's playing his way into the conversation right now with what he's doing with the Capitals.
Everybody for Canada is playing their way into a conversation right now. I mean, the goaltending is it's just crazy. Like on one side, you have Connor Hellebuck and like Jake Ottinger. And then, I mean, whoever else out of that American goalie, unfortunately, has to be the third. And that third goalie would probably, if he had dual citizenship, would probably be the starter for Canada. Because Sam Montembeault has not looked good. Jordan Binnington has looked not good. I mean, at this point, I might just put names on like a cookie and just let Milo pick one. And that'll be the starter for Canada because that's about as much faith.
That'll be more popular than Puckdoku if you did that. If you just let him pick like the goalies with a cookie. Yeah, I think that's the way to go. And I had to double check. Utah's average state elevation is 6,100. Salt Lake's at 4,200. So about, maybe about 1,000 feet less than Denver. So I misspoke there. Still elevation, just not quite a mile.
All right. So you will send Colorado. You will send your hate mail directly to Adam, right? For thinking that Salt Lake's elevation was higher.
That's Anthony Rivera, New Jersey. Yes. Yeah, that's where we're sending it.
That's correct. Send it there.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm out in California. It'll take forever to get to me if you send me hate mail. You won't even hate me anymore by the time I get it.
It'll get lost in that cold air, apparently.
Oh,
is it cold in California now?
Depending upon where you are, it can be. Sure. I mean, if you're up by Lake Tahoe, it gets real cold up there. You're up at 8,000 feet in elevation.
Okay. Well, I just want you to know. Currently, it is 0 Celsius. So that is, I don't even have to do the math. That's 32 Fahrenheit today. So there you go.
All right, I'm going to look up Lake Tahoe, the yearly temperatures, and then we're going to wrap up this weather, geography, topography edition here. Because how we even got on this? Let's see here. It could go down to 18 degrees there in the winter, Fahrenheit.
Like it can go down to minus 20 here.
Like 14 below freezing, so whatever that translate to Celsius.
So just a regular December. Maybe not December now because of global warming. Just a regular January. That's a Tuesday in January in Canada. Somebody's probably wearing shorts here in that weather.
No, but you get nasty snow up there. Like you could get snowed in for like weeks at a time, like out of nowhere and stuff like that. Like it can really dump up there in Tahoe, and then down to it snows in I guess we're Sequoia, El Capitan and all that, and Yosemite and all that cool stuff. I got to get to Yosemite. I've never been. I got to get to Lake Tahoe too. I've never been. But wait, we got a comment here in the chat. When I was in university, there were people walking to class in shorts, minus 20 Celsius. Yeah,
there you go. See, now I know state of survival is Canadian. That's how I know from minus 20 Celsius. B, I mean, I still wear my flip flops out. Like it's cold, but not if I'm going out for too long. If I'm not going out for too long, and it's like between like 10 and like I'll say 3 degrees, I'll probably have the pair of shorts on with the flip flops to go to the grocery store. It's not far, so and once you're in there, it's already warm.
That's the thing. I mean, as you're just walking to the car, walking down the block, as long as the snow's not like built up or there's not too icy, you just throw a pair of flip flops on. As long as the rest of you's covered, you're fine.
Minus 20, just again a regular day in January. That's what
minus 20 Celsius to Fahrenheit. So minus 4 below Fahrenheit. That's pretty cool. There we go.
I'm glad we have reestablished this debate.
Next week we talk about what defines hot after we finally got to the bottom of what defines cold here on Total Hockey Now. But for @FuzzyChris91, I'm at Pucking Thoughts. For @AntRivera86, we'll be back next week. It was a good one today. Thank you to everybody. Extinct, Frank, State of Survival, everybody that checked in. Really appreciate it. We're back with you. It was a Wednesday edition today. We'll be back on Thursday next week, 1 week before American Thanksgiving. But thanks, folks, and see you next week on another episode of Total Hockey Now.